Looking for a way to complete your undergraduate degree? Discover the Felician Way. Felician University can help you finish your degree online, on campus, or a blend of both. Evenings, weekends, whatever works best for you. And you can count on Felician to help make it affordable. Find out more at their open house, Thursday, March 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. Go to felician.edu to register today and make the Felician Way the way to finally finish your degree.
I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
And we are back for another week of the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. Hope everybody's doing well out there. As always, I am Bob Lung with Big Guy Fantasy Sports. On the other side of the glass is my man, Ron Rigney, sitting down in Florida, as I assume as usual, on his back porch, enjoying the beautiful warm weather and doing the podcast from in the outdoors. Ron, am I wrong?
I hate that you set it up so beautifully, but the one time I'm actually indoors, you lay up that setup for me. So no, I'm actually indoors tonight, but it is, another beautiful day today. I think it got to like 78, 75. Nice. I mowed some grass, so dragging a little bit here. Get another busy Sunday and a day in the life of, but getting stuff done around here, and then we're in the depths of the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational Draft as well. Slow draft that there's. Pretty much everybody that's podcasting. Yeah, I'm in one of the leagues there. The second year I'm in.
Nice. How's it going? How's the draft gone so far?
Well, at the start, got a lot of my target guys, and then as we've gone along, it's been Snipe City about the past 4 or 5 rounds for me. So I'm
what round
struggling a little bit with my queue. I'm only in like round 17. I think we're about 3 or 4 rounds behind everybody. But that's okay. We got time. So
how long is it? 20 rounds in that? No. 30 rounds.
I believe it's 30 because we have to go. It's a 23-man roster, and I think you have 7 for your bench. So we still got a little ways to go. But
and is that best ball or
no? It's just it's weekly set up with Fab. So you set your lineup Monday, I think before first pitch, and then what you have for the week is yes.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Well, hey, great segue because speaking of baseball, for those of you who may have missed last week's show. When we did our clutch awards for the running backs, we made the big announcement that Big Guy Fantasy Sports has now moved into consistency for fantasy baseball head-to-head league. So we are very excited about it. We got some great new writers. We did our first fantasy baseball consistency show yesterday. It is now out there on Spreaker as well under the Big Guy Fantasy Sports umbrella. And I assume in a few days it'll get out to all of the other ones. Somebody already hit me up today, was excited about it, and said, hey, is it on iTunes? And I said, well, it should be. I said, I know our football one is. And he said, I don't see it. And I'm like, you know what? First one, I think it takes like 72 hours to make it to iTunes. So for those of you who are looking for it on iTunes, it may not be there yet, but maybe Monday, Tuesday. But I think once we get in the flow, once it's approved and it's got set up, I don't think it's a problem. So definitely check it out. Great show yesterday. Myself, Wes Easley, and Aaron Peggs. We talked about shortstops, outfielders, and relief pitchers. Those guys did a great job writing the articles on the site, as of course did my man Ron Rigney here, who does the first baseman. Am I right?
That's it.
And so check those out, the year in review, year in a preview for 2020, as well as the undervalued, I wouldn't say wide receivers because that's what we're going to talk about here, the undervalued players as well. For first base and all the positions, some great stuff. And if you're used to this on the football side and you followed us for years and read the magazine, the guide, and all that exciting stuff, you know what this is all about. It's finding that value in the consistent player whose ADP may not be high enough reflecting their consistency because maybe they missed some games, so their overall points aren't as high, whatever the case may be. It's the same stuff we talk about in football. Now we're applying it to the baseball for head-to-head, and you can see how, obviously you see the studs up there in that 70, 80% range, 90%. But what you also see are the guys who are high-scoring, but not as consistent, just like we have for football. So make sure you check that out. It is completely free. There is going to be no paywalls to get to anything for baseball this year. So all of this will be free this year. We'll see how it goes, and then we might put it behind that next year. We're looking forward to possibly, and I'll say possibly because it's going to be a lot of work, of putting out our first fantasy baseball consistency guide this fall for next season for 2021. We'll see how everything goes, but that is the ultimate goal here for this. Those guys are excited. The writers are excited. Everybody's excited to possibly put that together, but it's a lot more work than just putting 175 football players together. You usually get into some pretty high numbers with that, so we'll see how that all comes together. But Ron, any thoughts on the baseball? I know you haven't heard the show yet, but the articles, the talent that we've been so blessed to become upon here. I mean, I knew you were talented at this because I know you do the baseball with the boys for Nasty Cast, but a lot of good writers we got in.
Well, and a lot of the guys, too, that we brought in are guys that I've seen the names around. You see them around Twitter and you see them, in these various things like TGFBI. I think a few of those guys are in there as well.
Yeah, a number of them are, yeah.
And it's cool to kind of just get firsthand to see exactly what they do. Because, don't always have time to there's so many sites out there now and so many good people that provide such good content. It's good to be able to kind of see those guys and I get to read their articles. But the cool thing is their articles are with us. Right. And their talent is with us. But yeah, it's going to be super cool. And I'm like you, I'm anxious to see how it works out. But yeah, if we could put a guide out next year, I think that would be awesome. That'd definitely be a game changer as far as those head-to-head leagues for sure.
Definitely. And one of the guys, Wes Easley, I talked about, he's going to be heading up the podcast, I'm going to do the first one. I did the first one, and he'll be taking over. But, it was really interesting to hear Wes in the podcast talk about how, he came on board to write because he just wanted to get into this. And he's been playing fantasy baseball for years and really has kind of done his own thing from a podcast, and he was wanting to start his own website. And he said when he saw that I was looking for writers, he was excited to do it. He goes, but I really didn't understand the consistency, and I didn't really know the numbers or anything until, he goes, but now that I've gotten into it, he goes, this stuff all makes so much sense to him now. And how he's completely just twisted around how he looks at players and is analyzing them for these head-to-head leagues. And he goes, I'm going to tell you right now, it's already changed me, and I just started into this. He goes, I hope we can change other people out there and do what we did for football to the baseball side. And, he's definitely all in, and obviously we're excited for that. So, but anyway, so check that out. Anybody out there looking into your fantasy baseball leagues head-to-head, definitely check it out. Some good information. And it might be good information if you're in rotisserie because, maybe you're looking for those fast starters, so you want to grab them now, or you're looking for some guys that – because you can look at the player details and see how they do in weeks, the weeks that might fall in, May and June, and see how consistent they were during that month, because you can just look at that and kind of line it up and calculate that yourself. So there's some good stuff out there, and we'll keep expanding on that also. But all right, so Ron, we're here for another one of our annual events, and that is the COVETED 2019 Consistency Awards, and this week we're talking about the wide receivers. And there was a lot of, I'm not sure what the word I'm going to use here, just a lot of weird stuff. I guess I'll be polite. It all started with Antonio Brown and his disaster and meltdowns, and it just weird stuff after weird stuff. A lot of the big names they were up there, but not in the same, realm. The Devontae Adams, the Hopkins, those kind of guys were up there, but not that 100%. And Devontae Adams, I think, ended the year at somewhere. Let me find it here. I kind of forgot it because I think it's a lot farther down than I gave him credit for.
Well, don't say too much about him because I'm going to pick on him here in a couple seconds. So.
Okay, all right. We won't talk about him. So let's just move into, because I think I know where Ron's going with this, to our first award for the evening, and that is the one that really nobody wants, and that is the worst value. It goes to the wide receiver, the highest ADP at the beginning of the year, and but yet ends the season with the worst combination of total fantasy points and consistency, thus making him the worst value in 2019. And So, Ron, I'm going to let you be the first nominee, and I think I know where you're going with this.
I think you got me figured out here. And, we always start with this one. Not one that you want to be nominated for. You definitely don't want to win it. But, the guy that I'm looking at, you gave him away, Devontae Adams. Second guy off the board, top 10 pick, average ADP of 8th overall. And not to say that he had a bad season, and he was nicked up a little bit. Yet again, you hate to pick on those injured guys, but he did miss 4 games. Or actually, he missed 3 games. He started 12 out of 14, but was under 1,000 yards receiving, 997, 83 grabs, 5 touchdowns, which is his low since 2015 when he only had 1. He's had double digits the last 3 previous seasons before 2019. Just kind of fell off the map a little bit, and you started to mention it a little bit, but you got to scroll down this list to look for him, and you don't want to scroll down that list too much to look for that second overall guy. But he comes in at 24th overall in total points, 69% consistent, 9 out of 13 games. So one of the bigger disappointments out there when you're spending a top 10 pick on the guy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was just a mess. And I think, if I remember right, if you look at his actual week by weeks, he started off extremely slow. And that was when some of the injuries came into play, and that kind of stuff. And I'm still trying to find him on the sheet. I'm terrible at finding stuff tonight. Where the heck is he? Man, why can't I find Devontae Adams? He's got to be on this first sheet, and I'm just literally can't.
You talking about the consistency sheet?
I'm talking about the week-by-week sheet. I wanted to see if he started off Green Bay. There he is. I'm sorry. Okay. So first 7 games, he goes 2 for 7. Actually, if you go to week 8. So he was 2 for 8. Now, I think there were some injuries in there. So some of those zeros are just games he did not play. But then he did get back to his normal self and go 8 for 9 or 7 for 8 over the last games or the end of the year to get to his 10. But yeah, just a slow start. But as bad as he was, which wasn't terrible, wasn't great, definitely not a top 5 pick, top 7 pick in most leagues. But the guy that won this played for the same team. I mean, the guy that should have won this was Antonio Brown. But I think his ADP wasn't as high by the time it really got to draft time because everybody knew that this guy was just a complete disaster. But the guy who did take it was the guy that played for the team he played for the year before, and that was Juju Smith-Schuster. And, wow, what a year. The amazing thing with Schuster was he started off not too bad. I mean, he really didn't have a terrible start at the beginning of the year. Yeah, he's on the second page, I'm pretty sure for that. But, yeah, so if I can find him again. Holy cow, why am I having such a struggling time tonight finding people on my own sheets? Juju Smith. Why can't I find Juju? Oh, there he is. Okay, so
that's how bad he was.
Yeah, that's how bad he was. So first 5 games, he's 4 for 5. Not a problem. And Big Ben gets hurt in week 3, if I'm not mistaken. Week 2 or week 3. So there was some concern, but Juju kept playing well, kept doing good, and then all of a sudden, he just fell apart. And after that week 5, he only earned 1 more clutch game. He did miss 4 games due to injury. So at the end of the year, he ends up being ranked 65th in total points. He had a clutch rate of only 42%. He was 5 for 12. That ranked him 53rd. Now, there's bad. Especially when you talk about Juju was a second-round pick. Some leagues, depending if it's a 14-team league, it might have been going late first round. But definitely a second-round pick. Never got past that. So to be a second-round pick and to fall that far, man, I can't remember the last time a solid receiver like that wasn't all injuries. I mean, there is a little bit of injuries involved here, but when the quarterback went down, to see him completely fall apart. I think the last time this happened was when Luck went down and T.Y. Hilton. Remember, he had a disastrous year when Luck didn't play most of the season. I think that's the last time I remember a wide receiver being this low. Am I right?
It's got to be close. Yeah, well, I don't even know if he was that bad, to be honest.
He was he was like in the 30
percentile. It's low, but this is. Yeah. I mean, he's down here, and you like to think that they have talented backups and guys that can target these talented receivers. And I haven't seen enough Steelers film to know if it's Juju Smith-Schuster not getting open or it's a quarterback. But when you look at his targets from 2018 to 2019, when he spent that 2018 season with Big Ben, he had 166 targets in 2018, went all the way down to 70 in 2019.
Right.
Almost half. And then the catch rate went down, too. Catch rate went down about 7% as well. So didn't catch as many of his targets.
I think the other thing that happened with Juju in Pittsburgh, not only did the quarterback go down and he didn't have really very good replacements, but nobody really stepped up to be the solid number 2 receiver that we were hoping for. We thought it was going to be James Washington. That didn't happen. Then they thought it was going to be Deontay Johnson. He had his moments, but that really never came to play. And then, then they got down to their third quarterback, and then, then Myles Garrett tried to beat the crap out of Rudolph with his helmet. So it just got uglier from there. But in the end, Juju Smith runs away with this one for the worst value of the year award. So let's move on to the receiver that was the best value of the year. This receiver gets the winner of this award is the lowest ADP at the beginning of the season and ends the season with the best combination of total fantasy points and consistency, thus making him a best value at wide receiver. And, there was some decent ones. I'll throw out the nominee, the one that I think that was had a pretty solid, turnaround or value was probably, I'm going to go with Golden Tate because he got traded to the Giants and there wasn't a lot of love for him. And, he had to be suspended the first 5 games because he took some kind of fertility drug that was on the bad list, and he tried to fight it, didn't work. But when he did play, and he played 11 games after he came back from a suspension, 82%, not too bad. Certainly could be a solid sleeper. Next year we assume Sterling Shepard comes back, and we get Evan Ingram's back. So. He did all that with all the shakeups going on in that. But, Ron, I think you know who the winner is, and it's not even close, in my opinion, do you?
It's definitely not. And our winner's going to – and a guy I'd like to throw out there real quick before we do give the winner, and I won't go too deep into it. Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was sitting there. You've got to look you don't have to go too far down the list to see him. He was 8th in total fantasy points. He was 81% consistent, so he was a great value based on his ADP. But our winner's going to be John Brown. And it's not even close. Like you said, John Brown is all the way down there, a wide receiver 55. As you said in the article, you had him as a decent wide receiver 5 option. And then when you look at our rankings here, he's right there, right behind Allen Robinson. He's 20th in total points, but he was 87% consistent, 13 out of 15 games. And he became much more than just that big play guy, that guy that's going to get you 3 for 90 and a touchdown every other week. 72 catches, 1,060 yards, and 6 scores for that Buffalo offense. And yet again, another one of those guys on that Buffalo offense, along with Josh Rosen at quarterback, that doesn't come off as flashy, or Josh Allen, sorry, that doesn't come off as flashy, but just week in and week out gave you that consistency that you were looking for.
Right. No, it's without a doubt. And like you said, as I put in the article, I liked him as a wide receiver 5. I had him on a few teams. I wish I would have drafted more of him, but I was just, he had never really showed any consistency at any other spot he had stopped at. You've got a guy we don't really believe has a consistent arm in Josh Allen, but boy, they clicked very, very well. And, the interesting thing, and I know it's early for ADPs, but, Fantasy Football Calculator's ADP has John Brown at wide receiver 38. So he's getting some love. Certainly he's higher than last year. But for a guy that ended up as the 3rd most consistent wide receiver out there at 87%, if I can get him as my number 4, heck, even as my number 3, if he can be anywhere near that again, that's going to be some great value heading into 2020. So definitely keep an eye out in your best ball leagues for John Brown, because you got to assume Buffalo's going to go out there and probably get some decent picks. Maybe they'll get another wide receiver on the other side. It's a very deep receiver class this year in the NFL draft, so a lot of potential for somebody to fall and be a solid receiver on the other side. So we'll see how that all plays out in Buffalo. All right, so let's move on to one of our coveted, definitely awards, and that is the Rookie Wide Receiver of the Year. Which rookie ends the season with the best combination of total points and consistency? And Ron, I'll let you throw out the nomination on this one, and then I'll come back with our winner.
And I think yet again the winner is the guy that definitely deserves it. But the guy I'm going to throw out definitely should deserve some love, especially on the absolute garbage team that he is stuck playing for. And that's my boy Terry Targets, scary Terry McLaurin. 58 grabs, 919 yards, 7 scores. When you look at him in our rankings, you just got to scroll down a little bit to find him, but ended up top 30 total points, ended up with 57% consistency, 8 out of 14 games. And considering, like I said, the offense that was around him, the guys he had throwing him the football, I think that's a pretty solid season for a guy that is basically kind of the turd in the punch bowl there around with the rest of that offense. So my guy is going to be Terry Targets for sure. But I think we gave the winner to the right guy, though.
Terry Targets. Another one that you didn't mention, which is, and I have no problem with Terry McLaurin. I mean, he was 57% consistent. We all know that for a rookie, if you can get 60% or higher in your rookie year, you're certainly one of the elite rookies from the past. In fact, I just finished the rookie versus consistency article today that will be going up this week. And, once again, for the season, there was only 4 out of 44 players out of the 44 players drafted as a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end in the first 4 rounds in 2019. Only 4 of them went over 60%, and there were 2 wide receiver rookies who did that. McLaurin was very close at 57%, as I mentioned. Deebo Samuels was exactly at 60%, and if you looked at his second half of the year, he went like 7 for 9. So he definitely, and I know if anybody watched the playoffs, they saw Samuel was definitely in sync with Jimmy Graves. So definitely love him. Definitely would be a good also nominee for this. But as you're right, the winner won this hands down, and that is DK Metcalf from Seattle, 69% consistency. Total points ranked him 33rd, which was actually 2 spots below Deebo, but he had 2 more clutch games. That was the difference. In plus, he was 26th in X consistency. And the interesting thing in both of these receivers' cases is that how they basically got to these spots, got over 60% by having very, very solid second halves. I already talked about Samuel being 7 for 9. Metcalf, I think, was 8 for 9. So they both had very good second halves, which kind of always points out to the fact that is a good thing if you're looking to draft them in 2020. One of the unique things about our rookies versus consistency article is that if you look at like the running backs who have earned over 60% in their first year, not all of them come back to be solid players moving forward. There's been guys like Trent Richardson that have done it. There's been guys, like Saquon Barkley that have done it. So, and Zeke. So sometimes it has, sometimes they've, went, goes right at it, and they keep that consistency up. Others not as much. But wide receivers, they do. If you're consistent their rookie season, they usually do a pretty, they usually are right there every year and stay consistent after that fact. So remember that when you're looking at your teams this year, we'll definitely, of course, be highlighting that information in the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide coming out May 1st. But definitely keep an eye on Metcalf and Deebo. Now, the key is going to be is that their ADP is going to be much higher. So they're going to have to be drafted as, a wide receiver 2. You might get lucky and get them as a 3. But they, again, wide receivers have usually shown that they stay consistent if they are consistent in their rookie season. So both of those guys should be solid picks moving forward into next year. All right, let's move on.
Real quick, one more thing I want to throw out there real quick about DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin. When you compare their stat lines, it is an example of why we do what we do every week with the consistency. So when you look at their overall stats for the year, when you look at Metcalf and McLaurin, same amount of receptions, same amount of touchdowns, and McLaurin actually had 19 more yards. But when you look at it through the consistency lens that we do every week, You've got Metcalf sitting there 17th clutch rating. You've got McLaurin all the way down at 32nd. And so you've got DK Metcalf giving you 3 more clutch games. So that illustrates right there, why we do what we do. Because when you look at the overall picture, it doesn't tell you the whole story.
Right. Now that's exactly why we do what we do is to separate those players that on paper, when you're looking just at pure stats, or even if you just got if you just have, fantasy points, there's quite a difference. And as you mentioned, if you look at it from a fantasy points perspective, McLaurin had 191.9. He was 29th, and DK Metcalf had 188.10. So he was actually, 3 points behind McLaurin in total fantasy points. And if you looked at just that, you'd be like, oh, well, I might as well draft McLaurin over Metcalf. Well, consistency-wise says, no, don't you dare. So, again, this is why we do it. Make sure that you pay attention as we're bringing you this, important information. So let's move on to the clutch less. And this goes to the receiver ends the season with a high ranking in total fantasy points, but his consistency was lower than expected, therefore making him looking less or more valuable than he really was worth to his fantasy teams. And, Ron, I'm not even going to request a recommendation for this because this is one of the guys that we always talk about when it comes to this scenario of scoring more points, being less consistent. And he still has one of my favorite nicknames and I forget who did it. I think it's the guys from one of the podcasts I was on. I think it's 2 for 1 podcast, but they call him the Fantasy Locust, and that is one Amari Cooper. As always, Cooper had a decent year in total points. He was 10th place overall, but his consistency was only 63%, ranked him 21st. And, we always, we will give him some love and state that this was his best consistency season since 2016. So he did improve a little bit, but, his current ADP already heading into next year is, of course, top 12. And folks, let me repeat, Cooper has never had a wide receiver 1 season in consistency. Do not buy into this. In fact, Michael Gallup actually had the exact same consistency as Cooper, and he's going 2 rounds later in ADP-wise. So, Ron, any argument with the Fantasy Locust taking over our clutch list spot again?
Not
I think it might be 2 out of the last 3 years.
We may have to just go ahead and name this the Amari Cooper Award. We may just have to name it after him at this point. And
the Fantasy Locust Award?
The Locust Award, yeah. I mean, it's something where I feel like we talk about him just about more than anybody and for a lot of the wrong reasons. And right. Yet again, you look at the overall body of work, 79 grabs, 1,189 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's an awesome season. Mm-hmm. But, kind of like you said before, Michael Gallup is a guy that was like the 50th wide receiver off the board last year, and he's a full 2 rounds behind him this year, and he basically gave you the same season. Now, when you get him at that kind of value last year, that's a little bit different story, but still, it's kind of like what we talked about with some of the Carolina receivers. Are you going to get the guy that's up front that's, the flashier of the two, or are you going to wait a couple rounds to get almost the same production? Right. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. So, yeah, it's a guy that, I mean, it's tough to trust because you like the overall body of work, but you don't know what weeks you're going to get it and what weeks you don't.
Right. And that's, again, like you said before when we were talking about, Metcalf and those kind of guys, this is why we do this. This is why we identify these players to you. Not every player we're identifying to you is because we like them. It's because we don't want you to draft them because we're not going to draft them. And we're trying to make your team consistent by putting consistent players on it and making sure you don't get inconsistent players on it. That's how this works, and that's what we have to bring to your attention and always make sure you're following. All right, so we go to the other side here. We go to the clutch more, somebody who was high in consistency, but low ranking in total points, thus making him look on the surface as less valuable, but they actually are worth a little bit more to your team. And Ron, I'll let you throw out a nominee if you have one.
I actually have 2, and I won't do a deep dive into either one. I'll just kind of give you the names and give you the surface stats here. But I went with Tyreek Hill and Calvin Ridley as a couple of guys that, on our rankings, you've got to, look at a little bit further down for them in total points. Tyreek Hill sitting at 32nd and Calvin Ridley sitting at 27th. Now, also, too, they did miss a handful of games as well. Mm-hmm. Both of them missed at least 3. But when you look at their consistency is sitting there at 69, 67%. Respectively, you've got Ridley sitting there at 16th ranked overall, and you've got Tyreek Hill sitting there at 18th ranked overall. So when they did suit up for you and they were healthy, pretty consistent.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. And I think we're a little bit disappointed with Tyreek because we had Tyreek kind of thought to be, but then if you remember with the offseason we went through with Tyreek, I mean, 1 week if you're drafting best ball, you had to draft him in the second round. And then the stuff starts coming down on this case and the is he going to get indicted? Is what's going to happen? Next thing you know, I remember being in, I think it was the 4th of July Invitational on SiriusXM that Howard and Fantasy Alarm put together, and I got Tyreek Hill in the 7th round, and I was so excited. And then especially I was really more excited when they announced that he wasn't going to get any suspension whatsoever. And sadly, I still did. I made the playoffs, but I didn't win the league, so I was pretty upset with that because I had a really solid team. When Tyreek Hill is your wide receiver 3, you think you do better, but I think my running backs let me down if I don't remember. But anyway, the winner of the Clutch More, and I've already actually talked about him a little bit. Kind of forgot he was getting this award, but it's Golden Tate. And as I mentioned, he signed by the Giants in the offseason. He gets suspended for the banned fertility drug. Most people remember that part. But what people don't remember, or if they're looked at from last year, is that Tate ended the year with an 82% clutch rate, which ranked him 4th overall. His total points only ranked him 43rd because he missed those games due to the suspension. But even in the games when Sterling Shepard and Tate were on the field at the same time, Tate still earned over 70% consistency. His X consistency was a solid 11.42, which ended him the year ranked 11th. Right now, his ADP is wide receiver 47. So you know that he's going to get thrown the ball, even if everybody's healthy. We got Shepard, Ingram, and Tate healthy. He still got the ball 70% of the time, or he's getting 70% clutch rate from that perspective. And this is a hard one to judge, but I really like his value heading into this year. I think he's going to be on a lot of my teams, and he certainly proved that. He didn't lose what, a lot of people thought he was kind of done when Detroit let him go and he went off to the Giants, but it seems like he still got it, Ron. What do you think?
No, definitely. And anytime you can see a guy post numbers like that, especially with a rookie quarterback, I think that says a lot about their ability to get open and their ability to, maybe read defenses or maybe call audibles with the quarterback as well. So, he's a guy yet again. I drafted him first year at Kings Classic, and he really burnt me hard when he was in Philly. So it's one of those things that I don't know if I have like just a mental block and I can't take him anymore. Maybe that has something to do with it. But no, I'm gonna have to get past that because if he's a solid value, especially with what he was able to do last year with Daniel Jones at quarterback, I think you got to look at him definitely.
Right, and he's one of those guys. We see this all the time, Ron. The aging veteran, that's not the shiny new toy. So people like the Fitzgeralds over the past years, and I think Tate's going to be one of those guys. He's going to be, he's going to be an OG, an old guy, and nobody wants the old guys. But yet that's where you can find some really good value, consistency wise. He proved it last year. Definitely looking forward to this year the same. So we're going to go to the Clutch Comeback Player of the Year, and Ron, I didn't think I would ever in my lifetime put this man on any kind of positive fantasy football award, and yet there he is. And he is, of course, Devontae Parker. We've only been waiting 5 years for his breakout, and it finally happened in 2019. He was always the hype of preseason, best shape ever, catching everything thrown to him, blah, 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 blah. We've all heard it, right, Ron? But yet, 2018, check these numbers out. 2018, he was ranked 106th in total points, and he played 14 games. He's 2 for 14, 14% consistency rating. Nobody drafted him. Nobody wanted him. There was some hype in preseason, as always. And yet, what happens? Fitzmagic, baby. The 2019 season, he explodes for 246 points, ranked 11th, 81% clutch rating, 6th overall in consistency. Now the question, does he do it again? Because guess what? There's not a lot of faith with his numbers right now, ADP-wise. He's at wide receiver 37. So people really aren't believing it. Now, Fitzmagic is going to be there. They assume they're going to take probably Tua or somebody at quarterback. But Are you going to draft Devontae Parker as your wide receiver 3, or wide receiver 4 in 2020? Will you be able to do that? Will you be able to click the draft him button? That is the question that has to be asked. Ron, will you do it?
If it's my wide receiver 4, yes.
Okay.
I don't really have to think about it too much. I think that's solid there. Wide receiver 3, I'm going to have to really, really think about it. I'm going to have to see what else is on the board at that point. It's going to be tempting. But, as you dive deeper into these numbers, the one thing that scares me a little bit is when I was looking at these receivers, I'm looking at catch rate, and his catch rate's only 56%, and he's down a little bit there. He was targeted 128 times, hauled in 72 of them. So, but I mean, on the other side of that, though, with yet again the offense around him, we've been waiting on him to break out for a while. Which, by the way, too, he's only 26 years old. Seems like he's been around for 15 years.
Seems like he's been here forever, but yeah, it's not that old.
Yeah, only 26, so he's still got some good football ahead of him. And if he has finally figured it out, and you can get him as your wide receiver 3, I mean, who would not want 72, 1,202, 9 touchdowns out of your wide receiver 3?
Right. Oh, I couldn't agree more. But it's just that it's we talk about this a lot in baseball. It's that one outlier year that's so much better than the others. And do you trust it and hope for it again? I think you're kind of silly if you don't expect it to come down a little bit, but still, if you can get him at that point, and he plays 14 games, he can give you a little over 1,000 yards. If he catches 60 balls, gives you 6 or 7 touchdowns, that's still pretty solid wide receiver 3 numbers too. Yeah. If you take him as your 3 or 4 and he gets you 70% consistency, and that's still a hell of a number, regardless, for a wide receiver 3. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously we'll see, but there seems to be some upbeatness, from the coaching staff down there. They got some fire burning, but a lot of weapons that they need. So we'll see how they all address it in the draft. And Preston Williams was looking pretty good on the other side there as well. So might have a little bit of an offense there in Miami.
Well, and you talking about the coaching staff and those guys, one of the things I'm cursed with down here is I'm in the Dolphins local market, so they are on every week. So I saw them play quite a bit, and what I will say is I was impressed more than anything with their ability that they were in every game, and they played hard every game, and they didn't mail it in. So maybe that has something to do with it too. Maybe a new culture. He's kind of buying into that. Maybe he kind of is going about his business a different way.
Definitely. All right, so that brings us to, of course, the ultimate choice, the ultimate award every year. I know these guys probably tear up every time they see it posted on Twitter that they've won, and I'm sure that this guy will be no different, especially since he's went to college in my home state of Ohio. And, this one wasn't as close as we had. Last year we had that very tight race between Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. They were both 100%. It was a tough decision. This year, not so much. And that guy, of course, is from the Ohio State University, Mr. Michael Thomas. And last year, like I said, we had a close race. Thomas, we liked, but we didn't love going into this past year. He was only 75% consistent in 2018. We certainly had him as a wide receiver 1. I think I had him 7th because I took a lot of crap for the fact that I had Julian Edelman ahead of him, ranked 6th, and so they were more upset about Edelman being 6th than they were about Thomas being 7th. By the way, Edelman ended the year 7th. Just saying. But
it's pretty good.
But, number 1 in total points, 100 points higher than second place, 94% clutch rate. The second closest after that was Julio Jones at 87%. His X-consistency, 22.01. Julio Jones second, 15.9. Wasn't even close. But as we look forward, I'm already seeing an ADP for Michael Thomas at 104. That's a little rich for me. I just don't know if Thomas can repeat those numbers. Now, we know Breeze is supposed to come back. And I think he'll be obviously worthy of being drafted in the first round. I'm good with 6th or 7th, but man, number 4 might be a little high. But again, we just kind of have to wait and see how it all plays out. Your thoughts on Michael Thomas as the MVP and looking forward to 2020, how high will you draft Michael Thomas in a PPR format?
That's I mean, it's tough. I mean, PPR. I want to say in PPR, I don't think I could argue with that fourth pick all that much. I think that's pretty fair. If it's standard league, I don't know necessarily. I'm gonna have to get him to slip to me a little bit. But dude was a target machine last year, reception machine last year. I don't really see a whole lot changing, and I think we got a little bit better season out of Drew Brees than what we thought we might get. And so I don't really see a reason to maybe think we might not get that at least one more year. I don't think he was really thinking about hanging it up, and the offense is talented around him. They got plenty of weapons. So PPR, I think I could go number 4. Standard needs to slip to me just a few spots, but I definitely first rounder. Definitely, I think top 6, top 7. I don't think he goes past number 7 in any format. Even if he does, I think that's a hell of a value there.
Right, and I think it's mostly because of the fact that there really isn't a solid, no doubt about it, number 4 running back. I think the big 3 will still be there. Still be Zeke, McCaffrey, and Zeke, McCaffrey, and Barkley. Even though Barkley kind of had a down year, I certainly would have no problem drafting him in the top 3. I've seen Cook at 104 as well. But, you're not going to put Aaron Jones up there. You're not going to put Derrick Henry that high. You could. Eckler, Fournette, Chubb. That's your remaining first rounders. I think it's just very difficult to move them up, those guys up to the number 4 spot and know you're going to get that, where it's a pretty good chance you could see Thomas repeat those numbers, at least be in consistency numbers. He might not get, the same number of catches and the same, yards and touchdowns and that kind of stuff. I think he certainly will regress a little bit from that. But on the other hand, I think that the 90% consistency is definitely there, and that's what you want out of a guy that's going to be drafted at 104. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and when you compare him with some of those names too, I was just kind of going over in my head, doing a comparison of who I would take over that. And most of the guys you said, other than those big 3 running backs, I don't think I would take over Michael Thomas. Definitely wouldn't take. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking Dalvin Cook at 1-4. I don't believe. And not to say that Dalvin Cook didn't have a great season last year, but he kind of has that propensity to be nicked up a little bit. Yep. But I think when you compare him with a lot of those other guys that you mentioned, I think I would go Thomas every time. So I feel a little bit better about that. But yeah, I think he's still there as that first guy off the board after those big 3.
Definitely. All right, so we got about 3 minutes left. So as we kind of look down the list here, wide receiver wise, anybody else that kind of jumped out to you? I know you talked about Allen Robinson. What about Chris Godwin? Looking for ends the year 2nd in total points, actually tied with Julio Jones at 274.1, 79% consistent. Definitely looked like he was the guy. But with the potential shakeup in Tampa of, whether it's going to be Winston, whether they're going to bring in Rivers, how are you drafting a guy like Chris Godwin in the late first round?
I don't know if I could take him in the late first round. I think he'd have to fall to the 2nd for me. But I'm glad you mentioned him, because he was the only other guy that I would have even maybe given an honorable mention to as far as our MVP, just because of his ADP going into the season last year. Right. He was the 20th wide receiver off the board, ended up in top 10 in consistency, 2nd in total points. Right. But it's a little scary because you don't know the quarterback situation there. Yet again, though, I feel a little more comfortable drafting him maybe than I might say Mike Evans, just because I don't know who's going to be in there throwing the deep ball. I feel like Godwin's more of that possession over the middle type guy, but he can stretch it a little bit too. He got a little bit of speed. But I think he's more of that guy that you rely on to move the chains, and I think that's a little bit easier for quarterbacks to do than throw that deep ball to Mike Evans.
Definitely. All right, well, we're winding down here under 2 minutes, so Ron, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and all your great baseball stuff outside of, obviously, Big Guy Fantasy Sports. We know they can find you there, but tell us about all the cool stuff that you're doing with the boys over at Fantrax and NastyCast.
So last week, NastyCast, was Van Lee and myself, just the two of us. We pulled a little double duty there. We were without the great Nate Dokken as far as looking at starting pitchers. And it's an interesting one to listen to because I don't think Van and I agreed on one starting pitcher outside the top 5. So definitely some interesting takes on both sides of the ball there. This week we're going to look at relief pitchers on the Dynasty podcast. We're going to be full strength with Nate, Van, and our boy Eric Cross. We're going to look at I cannot think of what system we're going to look at next week. So all I will say is we're going to keep those minor league system previews rolling for your dynasty startups and your dynasty drafts that are coming up, because those drafts are getting here. I've started a couple myself in my dynasty leagues, and they are upon us.
Yeah, it's spring training is going along quite well, and today's March 1st, gang. So here we go. We're in that last month, that last stretch, and baseball starts a little early, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like 26th?
Yeah, I want to say it's 26th or 27th. So I'd say
somewhere in there.
It's Wednesday or Thursday of that week. So we're within the month. So it's going to be here before you know it.
Yeah, because my buddy Frank said something about going to the Indians home opener. There's actually still tickets available, which is rare. But the damn game was like March 27th or 28th or something like that. And I'm like, God, it was terrible enough going like April 10th that it was still, 40 degrees. And I said, that's exactly what happened,
Play the lottery with Jackpocket. What's Jackpocket? Jackpocket is the lottery app that lets you play New Jersey lottery games right on your phone. People have won over $5 million playing the lottery on Jackpocket. Download Jackpocket and get a free Mega Millions ticket using promo code CASH. Jackpocket. Play the New Jersey lottery on your phone. Must be 18 or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please visit jackpocket.com/TOS for full terms of service. Play the lottery with Jackpocket. What's Jackpocket? Jackpocket is the lottery app that lets you play New Jersey lottery games right on your phone. People have won over $5 million playing the lottery on Jackpocket. Download Jackpocket and get a free Mega Millions ticket using promo code CASH. Jackpocket. Play the New Jersey lottery on your phone. Must be 18 or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please visit jackpocket.com/TOS for full terms of service.